welcome to the webinar today. Thank you all so much for joining. I cannot wait to dive in. We have a ton of great content for you today. I'm happy to be back presenting. It's been a little bit since I've been back. So like I said, we have a really good event planned. We're going to get started in just a little bit. For the folks who have already joined us, thank you. Welcome. We're going to give just another couple of minutes for other folks to jump on. I know if like me, they're probably back-to-back calls all day, maybe need to run and get a snack. So we want to just give them a little bit of space to do that. But while we wait, I do want to make sure that everyone is able to use the GoToWebinar question box. This is a feature within the GoToWebinar panel. You can go ahead and find it within your panel because that question box is going to essentially be our chat feature for the day. So it'll be really important. So you'll be able to see all of the responses that you put in there. That's how I'll be able to see them. You won't be able to chat with other attendees, but it will act like your chat feature today for speaking with me. So to get us all started, go ahead, find that question box and let me know where you're calling in from today. Say hey to everybody. That's one of my favorite things about these webinars is seeing where everyone is calling in from and just knowing that we're connecting people from all over the country. And we all are in different industries, we're doing different things, but we're all coming together for really one goal to improve our marketing, grow our businesses. So I'll call out some of these responses as they come in, but I just love to see where everybody is located. All right, I see Ohio, New York, PA, Missouri. I love it. South Florida, nice. Another PA, we've got Vegas. All right, keep putting them in the chat. Oh, I see a lot. I see Texas. That's my next door neighbor. I see a ton of people. Maine, Colorado. I see some more PA. I see Minnesota. Nice. Wisconsin, California. What about Canada? Do we have any of our Canadian friends on here? I see Texas, North Florida. Glad that we're representing all points of Florida today. All right. Keep throwing them in there. Find that question box. I love seeing it. Boston, nice. Nebraska. All right. So again, I wish I could call everybody out, but there's so many folks here and it just has me really excited. Let's go ahead and jump into the content. Tons of people are typing in, but I love that really we're all just here for one goal. Doesn't matter where we are, what time zone we're in, we're all here for the same thing. All right, so a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you are on the call today, note that it is going to be recorded. So today's session is going to be recorded and it will be provided to you after we close. So you don't have to worry about taking notes. You'll get the materials all in your inbox soon after this. And that includes a copy of the slides as well as the recording. And just note that all of our webinar recordings can actually be found on the WordStream and Local IQ YouTube channels. So if you navigate to YouTube, you type in Local IQ or WordStream, and then you click on one of our channels, you'll actually be able to see all of our past webinar recordings right there. So if you want to catch up on any of our older ones, or maybe you want to view this one later, you can find everything there later on. Also, the reason why I have you all practicing using that question box is I do love to know where everyone is calling in from. But I also want you to feel really comfortable with that because I want you to be able to throw in your questions throughout the webinar. And then at the end, we have a live Q&A session that you want to be sure to stick around for. So if you've attended any of our webinars in the past, you know that the Q&A sessions can be a lot of fun, really unique. So be sure to have some of those questions saved for the end. And again, you'll put them in that question box. And then before we go any further, I just want to go ahead and get us all on the same page about who Local IQ is. So some of you might already be working with us, and that's exciting. And then some of you might be totally new, or maybe you know us through one of our local publications in your market. We're happy to have you here. And then there are some others who might be familiar with us through our thought leadership brand, WordStream by Local IQ. So how do we all fit together? Well, local IQ is how businesses like yours attract and retain customers. So we help you get the inside track because we have millions of campaigns that we have been running for 10 plus years. We're able to give you a personalized approach to your local marketing because of all the expertise that we have. And then we're also able to help you get a step ahead because we have AI dashboards and AI infused solutions that help you with lead management and conversion. So no matter how you came in here, we're all part of the same family. We're all part of Local IQ, and we're happy to have you today. And one thing that we're really proud of to be is a premier partner with all major advertising platforms. We are also a newly minted one of only 6 TikTok marketing partners. So this is really exciting, and it's not something that is granted to any marketing platform out there. It's really only given to businesses that are able to display clear campaign success for their customers, thought leadership within the field, and then meet a rigorous set of requirements for each platform. So that's a little bit about us. Now I want to tell you a little bit about me. So I will be your webinar host and facilitator today. My name is Katie, and here at Local IQ, I work closely with our teams on digital marketing. And for the last 17 or so years, I've worked either in one capacity or another in digital marketing, equipping sales teams, working with agencies or individual business owners, just to give everybody what they need to succeed in their marketing. And then if you couldn't tell by my accent, I'm located in the southern US in Louisiana, but I always tell people not the fun part of Louisiana. We're about 5 hours north of New Orleans, but we still try to have a good time. All right, so one question that I get a lot about the topics that we cover here are where can people learn more? So before we dive in and sort of inundate you with all this great info, I want to point you to where you can go after the fact if you want to do some deep dives. This hour is going to fly by and there's going to be a ton of information. So if you ever feel like you need more time to sit with anything that we cover today or anything that we cover in our webinars, I highly recommend you navigate to Local IQ or WordStream websites. That's where we cover everything in these webinars in depth. Or you can find us on social media. So be sure to follow us there. That's where we share out notifications for future events. So if you want to join more webinars like this in the future, definitely be sure to follow us and turn on your post notifications. We also share out things like platform updates, interesting articles, and all sorts of things that advertisers or business owners should be aware of. So you can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, YouTube, you name it, we're there. All right. Okay, so why we are all here today. We are going to spend the next several minutes talking about a few things centered around social media. So we're going to go over why your social may not be paying off. We're going to talk about how to audit your presence, and that does include your paid presence. We're going to look at the data and see what it might be telling you. And then we're going to look at practical ways that you can dive in and start making a difference right now. Start with the question that probably brought a lot of you here today, if you saw the title of the webinar. So why isn't social media paying off the way that it should? Well, for a lot of businesses, this might ring true for you yourself. It isn't about not trying social. You're probably posting regularly. You're seeing some likes. You're maybe even getting followers. But the bigger question there is whether that activity is actually attracting customers. You want those likes to generate leads. You want to grow revenue. That's ultimately why we're all here. So in this first section, we're going to look at the most common reasons that social media typically underperforms, and more importantly, how to spot those issues in strategy. So before we talk about the optimization, let's talk about where we often see the breakdowns in social. So social is not just one channel, and it really hasn't been that way for a while. And when I say channel, I'm talking about things like the various platforms, but then also all of the different ways that you can show up. So all of those logos that you see on that chart. And so what you see are what we call those different platforms. And it's also a collection of audiences and formats. And each of those logos represents an algorithm and certain behaviors. And so that's why it can feel really overwhelming, especially if maybe you're not working with a large marketing team. Maybe you are the marketing team. Maybe you don't have endless time and resources. I don't really know who does. So the common pitfalls that we typically see from an organic perspective, if I'm just thinking about organic social, it's posting with clear strategy. So you're just getting stuff up there because you know you should. Maybe focusing too much on things like likes. We call those vanity metrics. Of a real business outcome, like we were talking about leads coming in or engagements. Or we see people letting their branding or their messaging kind of get away from them across platforms. Things start to kind of go left of center with the brand, and it gets out of hand. So the important thing to remember is that social media does still matter. And so from a recent survey that we conducted, you can see here on the screen that it is named 64% of businesses named it as their top source of traffic. And 61% of buyers said that they discovered a new brand or product on social in the last 12 months. And so while traffic is great, you want those eyeballs alone, it's not going to be the finish line. So we want to see that traffic turn into, like I said, meaningful engagement, website visits, calls, form fills, appointments, and ultimately customers. So this is where the right strategy and the right measurements really become critical, because that's when you're going to have to start shifting from activity to more impactful things, which we'll get to later. We'll talk about those metrics. So if you can't clearly answer what's working, which platform deserves more attention, or whether social is helping your business grow, that is usually a sign that your strategy needs to take a closer look. And so I'll stop here. If you've joined any of our webinars in the past, you know that we love to keep everyone on their toes. And I just want to know where everyone's tracking with me. So if you are on social now, which platforms do you think are driving the most business for you? Are you seeing the most from Facebook? Are you seeing a ton of leads and engagement? Is it Instagram? Maybe that's working better. Maybe you're on TikTok. Maybe you're B2B, and so LinkedIn is working better. But go ahead and throw your answer into that question box, because I just want to get a feel if you can answer this question. And if it's a little more difficult for you, and if it's just kind of like a guess, I think that that gives you an answer as well. That puts you in a good headspace for where we're going to go next. I see a lot of Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn. Someone said Facebook for the home services industry. That is super critical. We'll talk about knowing your industry and the platform here in just a little bit. So great. I see people who like have an understanding, they have a grasp. That's wonderful. So one of the biggest mistakes that businesses make is they assume that they need to be everywhere. And maybe you feel this too, that pressure. It's kind of like FOMO, but for your business. But that is really not the same as being effective. Different platforms are going to serve different purposes, kind of like what we were talking about with the different industries. And so the best platform for your business is really the one where your audience is spending time, where your content sort of naturally fits into the feed, and then where your customers are actually willing to engage with you. So for example, let's say you are a business with a really highly visual product or service. Maybe you're going to get more of your traction from Instagram or TikTok, because those are highly visual platforms. Whereas a B2B company, you may find more value in LinkedIn. So I saw some LinkedIn's. I also just saw someone say Instagram, I think, which is really funny. I get it. Sometimes it's a shot in the dark. So, you could be a local services business and you want to use Facebook because it really helps you get ingrained in the community and you're building trust and getting recommendations. And so I think it's really important to get an understanding of the audience, the offer, your goals, and then where that fits in with the pros and the audience of the different platforms. And so the key is just don't spread yourself too thin trying to keep up with every platform. let's just make some intentional choices. And we'll talk about doing that later. But ultimately, if you have the time and the budget to be strong on, let's say, 2 platforms, that's really going to be better for you in the long term than being inconsistent across 6. And this is also where data can really, really help to the person who said, I think you're not the only one out there. And so, having a platform or a partner that helps you understand where your ideal customers are engaging, where each channel is going to support your growth, that can take away a lot of the guesswork. And so once you know where you should be, and this is just a summary, what you see on the screen, what a quick glance of what each of these platforms offers. But the next question is whether your presence on those platforms is actually going to be set to convert attention into what we really want is action. So we've talked about some of the reasons that your social may not be paying off. Some of that may have resonated with you. But now let's go into auditing. I am a very practical person. I like to skip to the do. So this is kind of my section. This doesn't have to be complicated though. I think people hear audit and they think of their taxes and the IRS. This doesn't have to be that way. I think all it needs to just be is intentional. That's kind of the word of the day. So we're going to look at 5 different areas. Each one is going to give you a different clue about whether your social, either your paid or your organic, is really helping your business. And so we're going to start with the most visible piece of your social presence, and that is the profile themselves. So your profile is usually the first impression that someone gets of your business. It's like that front door, that first handshake. So before they call, before they submit a form, before they go visit, they're going to go to your social profile and decide if you look credible. So that means that your profile needs to do a lot of heavy lifting. It needs to do more than just sort of be there. We need it to support organic discovery, but then also paid campaign performance. So you're going to start off by reviewing the basics, things like branding consistency. That's a biggie for me. Things like your profile image, your bio, your business descriptions. We're going to show you some examples in a second. Contact info, calls to action, landing page destinations. Where are you taking them? And then even things like conversion tracking from your bio. That's a big deal. So some of these could seem like really small details, but it's those small gaps that really create hurdles for a prospect. So if it's on your ad or they visit your profile today, ask yourself, would they know who you are? Are they going to know what you offer or what they should do next? That's a big one too. So this is a really good place to start because it is, again, highly actionable, which is like a love language for me. You can make profile improvements pretty quickly. You just go in and edit, and those changes can improve every future interaction that somebody has with your business. And then if your profile does not clearly tell people what to do next, that's where you may be losing some folks. And so, that's where you can go in and make a big impact. So I promised some examples. Here are a few fun ones that kind of run the gamut of verticals, but they do a really good job of making a strong impression. So what I like about these is they don't try to say everything because that can be overwhelming, but what they do say is very clear and very to the point. So for a very small piece of real estate, your bio, like I said, it can do a lot of heavy lifting when you're communicating things like a value prop, establishing trust. Maybe you want to show a little personality or even sort of piquing curiosity and bringing people in. Your bio is a good place to do that. So in this first example is a retail bookstore. You can see that it's encouraging prospects to learn more about the business, but it's doing it in sort of like a mysterious way. It's funny, and that's how you drive traffic to your website. That's going to get people to click. It's going to get them to follow, but then they have their website right under the bio, and so they can really learn more. And then underneath it is an education example from UConn. And what I loved about this one is they're saying we're awesome, but they're also quantifying that. They're saying we're awesome in all of these ways. So they talk about their academic disciplines, their athletic achievements. There's a dog named Jonathan, which sounds fun. So your bio is really a perfect place to very neatly outline just a handful of things. Think about industry awards, maybe office amenities is something that you want to call out, an employee initiative. Basically, if you're proud of it, think about putting it in your bio and how you can do that in a creative way. And then last up for fun is a brewing company, and they went with the plain and simple route, and it works. And I think it's because they do it in a really strong and succinct way. They have brewer owned and operated. So what that tells me is that this is a company that people can feel good about doing business with. I can think of them as, it's a friend of mine who opened up a business. They talk about being founded in a small red barn in 2011. That gives you this idea of business that started as nothing and then turned into something. And so you can see how in just a few handful of words, they've really created this narrative around their brand and already established trust and affection. And so these are just some fun examples from just a few different industries. But think about your own business and how you can give someone enough information to understand why it's worth their time. But then enough curiosity to click through. We want them to visit the website. We want them to call. We want them to make an appointment or learn more. And so this is a really fun way to do that. So once you've gone through the profile and kind of cleaned it up a little bit, the next question is whether the right people are finding and engaging with you. Talk about your audience. So for this audit, we're going to try to answer who are you attracting, but not just that. We're not going to stop there. Right people. We want the people who are going to actually make a decision with your business, because it is quite possible to have engagement from people who really like your content, but they are not going to become a customer for whatever reason. It's also possible that your paid campaigns are reaching one audience while your organic content is resonating with another. So that's why you want to review your audience demographics, all of the basics, the geographic reach, the organic followers compared with your paid reach. You don't want a big discrepancy there. Look at your high engagement segments, customer versus non-customer engagement, who's coming back versus who is brand new. And so the key insight there is that the audience engaging with your content is not going to be the audience that could become a customer, not always. So it does not mean that engagement is bad. It just means that you need context. So you need to dig in just a little bit. And so if you're getting attention, but not appointments, maybe this is ringing true for you, your audience may not be aligned with your business goals, and that's okay. We can fix it. Nothing's unfixable. So when you examine your audience, you're going to want to look at three main layers. First is demographics, then persona, and then sentiment. So I'll talk about each of these. And if you're not a marketer and you don't want to be a professional marketer, that's fine. We'll break it down. So demographics are telling you who is engaging. It's the basics that you immediately think of: ages, locations, interest. But then we go a layer deeper into the persona. This helps you understand whether what they're going to do. So are they leads? Are they customers, partners, employees, or maybe it's a whole other group that you haven't even thought of and they need a label. And then sentiment is going to help you understand how people are interacting with your brand. So are they asking questions? Are they just looking for support? Maybe they're giving you feedback. Maybe they're just complaining, or are they engaging positively? All of that matters because each platform may tell you a different story. So if you're on platform at a couple of different places, they may be interacting differently. So your LinkedIn audience, it may be and very well likely will be very different from your Instagram audience. Your Facebook followers may include a really loyal pack of customers, but your paid campaigns are reaching people who have never heard of you before. And so the point of understanding all of that is not to chase down every person who engages, just like we don't need to be on every single platform out there. The purpose is to identify what audiences are going to be the most valuable for you. And then you want to change your content and your advertising to speak to that group. Each platform things like places like LinkedIn or Facebook, they're going to have a breakdown of your demographics and some insight into your audience directly in the platform. So that's typically really helpful. But you can go deeper and see additional things. Like if you are a local IQ customer, within your dash reporting, you can see all of that information plus insights into how they're interacting with the business. And you see it alongside your campaign performance too. So it's a really nice holistic view. Next up, it's time to look at your content. So what are you actually posting? And this is where a lot of businesses spend the most time. They think they just need to get it out there, get it on the feed, and see what happens. But a lot of times that's not the clearest measurement. So reviewing content means you're going to look at your top performing organic posts. So what's doing the best, but then you also want to look at your top performing paid ads. That's still part of your presence. What are the themes of your content? The formats, is it static images over videos? Which one's doing better? Engagement rates, metrics like click-through rates. And if you're doing video, you want to look at that performances too. So the key question is what's actually getting attention and action. But then I would actually take that one step further and ask, where are you earning the right to get the attention? So a funny post may get you the engagement, but a promotional post may get you the clicks. So a customer story may build trust, but maybe a behind the scenes video gets your brand more relatable. It really, each piece of content is going to play a different role, and that is ultimately guided by your goals. So it's really important to understand what you want to accomplish on each platform and then as a whole for your business. And then one thing to note is if you're only looking at likes, you're probably missing the content that's actually moving people closer to becoming customers. We talked about that discrepancy in likes versus, actionable engagement and content. So that's why it's really important to do a deep dive into what you're posting and look at what's happening there. And so these are just some examples that I really love that show the different types of content that can perform well. So you see things like educational posts, Q&As, behind the scenes content. I get a lot of questions from my clients about XYZ, fill in the blank. And they're doing this through videos, reels, maybe they're running promotions, featuring a customer story, or there's a paid ad. So the important thing is that not all of that content is doing the same job. So like we said earlier, some content is going to build awareness, some's going to build trust, some's going to drive traffic. It really just depends on your ultimate goals, and then understanding that people are in various stages of decision making. And so your content, paid or organic, can meet them in all of those places. So that's why it's really helpful to compare your most liked post, most clicked post, and then your highest converting post, because these are often 3 different pieces of content. And then when you understand that difference, that's when you can start building a more balanced content strategy. You don't have to choose between brand building and lead generation. Like I said, I think you need to do both because everyone's in different stages of decision. But you just need to know what content is doing which job. And so this is where some a broadening perspective can really help. So social should not sit in a silo. We're talking about social today, but really it should connect to your website. Should connect to your lead management, your follow-up, what's your overall customer journey. That is all playing a part to converting someone into a customer. And that's especially if your goals are more than just engagement. All right, so I've mentioned paid a couple of times. Let's talk about paid social now. So this is one of the areas where an audit can uncover real opportunity because there's budget attached to it. So you want to review top performing campaigns. And when you're doing that, you want to look at your cost per click, cost per lead, those are typically the primary metrics. You also want to look at your audience targeting and then budget, how much you're allocating towards each platform. And as you're looking at that, the questions that you're wanting to ask are, are my social dollars working as hard as I need them to? Because you can consider increasing your budget, and sometimes that's necessary. But there's also an opportunity to maybe reallocate. So, for example, maybe you find that one platform is generating less expensive traffic, but another is giving you higher quality leads. So maybe you have one campaign that looks really successful because it has a low cost per click, but it may not be bringing in really meaningful conversations. So that money may not be working as hard. So if you are spending money on a social strategy, but maybe you can't clearly connect that spend to a business outcome, I think that that's when you sort of pause and start asking some of those questions, and get a little deeper dive. And when you're asking those questions, something like benchmarks can be really helpful because that provides the context that I was kind of alluding to a second ago. So without a reference point, it's really hard to know whether your performance is good, bad, needs improvement. You don't know where you're landing if there's not a benchmark. And so I'll leave these up here for a second so you can take it in. These are our 2025 Facebook ads benchmarks. And we're actually getting ready to release our 2026 data later this year. But you can also view this by industry because that has a big impact on performance. But just remember, as you're looking at these and sort of thinking about your own business and performance, that this is not the whole story. Benchmarks are truly just a reference point. You're going to also need to take in consideration your industry, your location, your audience, what offer you're putting out in your paid, what's the creative saying, what's the landing look like, even everything down to your lead management. What's that follow-up process? All of that can influence performance. So just use benchmarks as a guide. And the bigger question is whether your performance is improving over time, and whether these ads are really supporting your specific business goals. So a campaign can look really expensive on the surface, but then if you dig deeper, it's producing really valuable leads, so it's worth it. Another view could give you a really efficient campaign, but maybe it's failing to create the really meaningful conversions. So context is key. The real secret sauce is working with a partner or an expert that can combine that campaign data with that vertical specific insight so that you're not evaluating performance in a vacuum, because that's very easy to happen. I know for Local IQ, our experts have years of data that not only inform the AI in our platform, but they've also been doing it for years. They know these industries by heart. And so that's really the sweet spot, is being able to find some expertise like that can help guide you along the way. All right, so next up, we're going to do a little spying. This is my favorite. I love to take a look at the competition. And again, we're not going to be snooping to copy the competition, but you can learn a ton of good information. It's just good to know what's happening around you. So you want to review how often they're posting. Think about your competitors right now, and maybe even go scroll some of their pages. What kind of content are they posting? What are those themes? What's their offer strategy? What do their ads look like? What's their creative look like? Competitor research, this can reveal a lot of gaps. So maybe as you do that, you see that your competitors are answering questions that maybe you're not. Maybe they're leaning more into video, maybe while you're just doing static posts. Maybe they're promoting certain offers that you think would perform really well. The goal is to just identify the opportunity. What are they doing well? Where are they maybe over investing? Where's there room for you to stand out? And you take that all in context with everything that we just talked about before: your audience, your goals, your benchmarks. The competitors are just a piece of that puzzle. So if your competitors are showing up more clearly, or maybe you see them being more consistent or confident than you are, that's a really good sign that prospects probably feel the same way. And so this is an opportunity for you to go in and improve. And so if I were doing this, these are some of the questions that I would ask. What are they talking about that I'm not? What formats are they investing in? Where are they finding real traction? Where are they getting this engagement? Because ultimately, I want to understand what my audience is already seeing and then how I can show up in the midst of that and then sort of rise above it. So over on our blogs, we actually have a few templates that help with audits like this, and you can identify where to show up. You likely already know your competitors. You can immediately rattle them off, but sometimes having a really structured view, like a good old-fashioned Excel sheet, can bring some things to light and be helpful. After you audit, you've taken a look at all the various pieces of the presence. We talked about the audience. We talked about the paid spend, the competitors. You want to take all of that and then let's look at the data. We can use it to interpret a few things. And so that's what we're going to talk about next. It's about translating all of the data that you just collected and making it into actual decisions. And that's what's going to help your business impact. And so for some of you, the data may confirm what's already working. For some of you, it may uncover some sort of discrepancies between your activity and the results that you want. Either way, the data is what's going to help you make the better decisions. So let's start with one of the more important distinctions. I've talked about it a little bit up until now, activity versus impact. All right. Activity metrics are the numbers that most people are going to look at first. Likes, followers, reach, comments. These are helpful. They're not to be discredited, but they do not always tell you whether your social is helping your business grow. On the other hand, there's things like impact metrics, and these are meaningful engagements, website visits, calls, form fills, conversations, the things that when you see them happen, you perk up because it is an opportunity. It's a hot lead. So this doesn't mean, again, that likes and follows are meaningless. They can be indicators of awareness and interest. They're part of the bigger picture, but they become much more valuable when you understand how they connect to the next step in the journey. So for you, this might be one of the most important mindset shifts. This may be a light bulb moment for you. The goal is not just to be seen, but it's to be seen by the right people and then move them towards action. So if you are thinking of your reporting and it stops at likes, reach, followers, you probably don't have enough information to really know whether your social is helping the business grow, but that's okay. We can course correct, we can change, we can optimize. And if I'm looking at my presence as a whole, it's really important to look beyond the individual post, because one post can tell you one thing, but a pattern can tell you so much more. So instead of only asking, did this post do well? Look for broader themes, sort of step back and look at your presence. Which content topics performed well? Which messages resonated with your audience? Are there differences between organic and paid? This is where your content really starts to become more intentional. So if educational posts are driving more website visits, that tells you something. If video is getting more engagement, that tells you something different. So there's value in connecting those dots. Again, this is also where a partner like Local IQ can help simplify that complexity. You may have the data coming in from multiple platforms, you've got ads, you've got website traffic. Bringing that all together to make it easier to understand that's what deserves the most attention. And then this slide is really the heart of measurement. Social media goals should connect to business objectives. So if your goal is, let's say, brand awareness, then reach and impressions, brand mentions, those are the engagements that are going to matter the most to you. But let's say you have a brick and mortar and those sales are what's going to be most important. So things like check-ins, appointments, calls, store visits, that's going to matter most. It really just depends on what your business objective is and then what the relative social media KPI is. I think the mistake is using the same scorecard for every goal. Brand awareness is going to have a very different way to be judged than a lead generation campaign. You're trying to reach people in two different spaces. So for a business owner, this makes reporting that much more useful and important. So instead of asking, did this do well? You want to say, did this support the objective that I care about? And if your social metrics are not tied to business goals, that's where it becomes a lot harder to know what to keep doing, what to stop doing, where to go next. All right, so now let's get into some really practical optimization. The good news is you can improve your social media performance. It doesn't need to require a complete overhaul. Often small changes can make the biggest impact. So let's start with one of the easiest places to make improvements. Is where we started earlier, your profile and bio. So optimizing your profile and your bio, simplest place to start, really simple, straightforward. Make sure all the available business information is filled out. You'd be shocked to know how many businesses don't have the basics like a phone number or a website. You can also like SEO hack your profile and your bio. You can use keywords so that platforms can better understand what your page is about. I think you want to make sure your profile picture is clear, your header's clear. Maybe you have all of that ready, and that's amazing. But then you can level it up a little bit. And like I said, focus on your social SEO. Keywords can really help support discovery, especially as we're leaning more towards these AI overviews and AI search results. There's just a shift in how people are using social platforms and then finding businesses. So that can be really beneficial. And if you are seeing your profile and it's incomplete or unclear, then you're probably limiting your visibility and your conversions. So make those quick tweaks and that'll go a long way to help you in the future. Next up is when we talk about the algorithm. I know it can feel like a black box, but algorithms are not a big mystery. They're just systems and they reward certain signals and then they prioritize content based off of that they think users are going to engage with. And so here is a summary. And like I said, we'll send these slides out afterwards along with the recording. But this is just a general breakdown of what each algorithm favors, what the business impact could be. I think the practical takeaway here is that your content should encourage meaningful interaction, and that's what the algorithms are going to reward. Ask questions, invite comments, create content that people want to share. Each platform has its own priorities. Each one is going to prioritize differently. And so knowing each algorithm, what it values is really important for organic content, but it is also going to set up your page strategy really well. The two work together. And so it's helpful to have a partner when you're trying to navigate both and then make sure that you're integrating both of those. And then something as basic as posting at the right time. Managing a social presence can be really granular and tedious. And ultimately, things like timing matter. You need to think through your audience's time zone, when they're going to be the most active, if there are specific rules or behaviors for each platform. So a chart like this that sort of summarizes the best times across the board is a really good starting point. But then, just like with the benchmarks, go back and look at your own data. See if your followers are engaging more in the evenings or if they're morning, mid-morning. The optimization here is really simple. You don't just post when it's convenient or when you think about it. You post when your audience is going to be most likely to see and engage with your content. It's pretty simple. And so if you're posting good content at the wrong time, that's when it's the most painful. That's when you're putting really good work and really good stuff out there. And it's just leaving you without the reach and engagement that you really need and that your business deserves for all the hard work that you put in. And then another basic is around calls to action. I think it's really important, whether you're doing a paid ad or even a content post, to have those opportunities for people to respond. A strong call is what's going to move someone from being a passive viewer to ultimately being a buyer. So social platforms, they typically will give you a menu of CTA buttons, but that doesn't mean that you can't weave in a CTA or some directive into the copy, or maybe the creative or the landing page experience. The ultimate goal is just to make it really clear whatever those next steps are. So you can also test CTAs if you don't know what works best. Some audiences are going to be more responsive to a sense of urgency. Maybe some want to be more clear. Our example up here, one of them shows the time commitment involved, and so that may be a motivator. So I think if people are engaging with your content, but they're not taking the next step, a CTA is a really good next thing to audit and to analyze and see where you could. And then for better or for worse, optimization is not a one-time task, unfortunately. It's a cycle. You test, you track, you tweak, then you repeat. You start it all over. So before you start running tests, though, I think it's really important, understand what you're going to be comparing. Ask yourself, am I going to be testing copy? Am I looking at video versus still images? If you are already testing, but maybe you're not tracking that, adding a UTM code to your links is going to be really valuable to help you understand whether that website traffic is coming from Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or if it's coming from another source. Testing does not have to be complicated. But again, it just needs to be structured. Same thing with an audit. It just needs to be intentional. So you're going to feel like you want to do everything at one time. But if you do, it's going to be hard to know what is actually making a difference. And so that's where having a third party, having a partner that understands the data and maybe has a platform that helps you move a little bit faster, that's where you can sort of connect all those dots and get a holistic view of what's happening. So if I had to bring it all together into just a few key points, first, run regular audits. Don't let this be something that you do occasionally. I think a quarterly review, a good gut check can help you stay aligned. Second, remember the difference between activity versus impact. One is going to get you closer to your business goals. And then again, test, track, tweak. Be really intentional when you try new things, identify what works, and then adjust your strategy to improve. And if there's one thing that I hope you take away, it's social media can absolutely support your business growth, but it just needs to be connected to a strategy and have some measurement and some action. And so if you're listening and you hear some of these things today and you're saying, I'm not really sure whether any of these pieces that we talked about today are working together, then that's exactly the kind of opportunity that an assessment can help uncover. And so, this was a lot of information. And so this is a time for you to, one, ask questions. If you have questions that you've been saving throughout the webinar, drop them into that question box now. And you can go ahead and you can, we'll start answering a lot of those. I saw questions coming in as I was going through the content. So go ahead, throw them into the chat to the question box again. But then we're also going to launch a poll across everyone's screen. So if you want to see what pieces are holding you back from your social, that's where you can click yes to that, and we can help you take a look. We can do a free health check, and that will give you an idea of, it's kind of like an audit, but you're not doing it by yourself. And it won't take a ton of time. Just click yes to the poll as soon as it goes live on the screen. But then I see a lot of questions coming in. And so I want to make sure that we're able to get to those. We have a few minutes. And so I want to take a look at some of these. Again, if you have not put your question into the question box, go ahead and do that now. And we'll go ahead and I'll start sifting through some of them as everybody is able to get to their poll question. So let's see, as we have some, again, the poll will stay up on the screen and it will sort of take over the screen. This will bring us into like an audio portion of the webinar. You can still hear me, but you may not see my face. So click yes if you want to talk to someone about a marketing health check. But then I'll go ahead and I'll take a look at some of these these questions, I see some things around timing and when to post. And there's a lot of them like this. So I'm just going to kind of combine it into one question. So one, there's no profile that is a one size, or platform that's a one size fit all. If you're wondering which one to use, I would go back and review that chart that talked about the demographics per each platform. Based on your business, your industry, your goals, Facebook may be the best option, or maybe TikTok makes the most sense. It really just depends. And then if I'm thinking about when to post, we showed those times a second ago. And if I think about the consistency of posting and how frequently to do that, again, I think it depends on your audience, but then also what you're providing them. You don't want to inundate people. You want to make sure that you're providing content when they're online, and then just take a look at what they're engaging with. Spend a week creating content, posting things. Go back and see what worked well. Maybe you can do a survey to your audience, do a poll yourself to your group and see. We can also look at your industry and your business. We can do a deep dive into what is going on in your industry, and that can provide a lot of insight into what you should be doing, not only organically, but also with a paid strategy. So if that sounds like you, that I would go ahead and click yes to that poll question, so you can go ahead and get an assessment and get a health check, and it'll provide a ton of answers for you. I also see some questions around deleting older or maybe lower performing social posts. I would not delete anything. With the shift in the way that search and people discover businesses now, content might be performing less than other content for a certain reason. And because you're able to go back and edit posts, I think that that's a chance for you to go a little bit. You don't necessarily have to start from scratch. You can take something that was out, and maybe you saw a post a few days ago performed better because you did X, Y, and Z. Try to apply that to something older and see if it gives you a lift. And then you've resurrected something and you didn't have to start from scratch, which is like my dream. I hate starting from scratch. And then I see questions around specific software to collect additional data, how you can see different insights. There's a few questions about that. But I think what I would say is there are native reporting platforms within each of the social platforms. I went blank for a second. So Facebook has its own option, may have its own insights. So there's that. You can go through each one. There's also third parties. And then if you work with a partner, a third party, a lot of times like Local IQ, we have our dash reporting. And so that takes a look at all of your campaigns across any platform and then tells you what you're doing. And then if you're running things like search or display, you're doing multiple types of tactics, you can all see it in the same place there. So there's a lot of different options as far as reporting. I think it's just lends itself to what is easier and what helps provide insights over just kind of looking at numbers and guessing. And so I also see some folks who are interested in talking or having a health assessment. And to that, I would say, go ahead and click yes to the poll that has popped up on your screen. That is a surefire way to get someone in touch with you. And we will make sure that we'll get you a health assessment. We'll also go through and take a look at all these other questions. There's a ton of coming in, and we had a lot of content today. So what I would say is, if you want to learn more, visit us on our blogs, check us out on our socials, or raise your hand and we'll have someone reach out to you, one of our experts, and you can talk about your strategy with that person, get a customized assessment. But thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for showing up for your marketing and for your business. And we will see you again soon.